all. Good afternoon. If you're following us from other countries outside of Brazil, it's a pleasure to start the seminar. Justice starts in childhood, the Brazilian experience in early childhood in the justice system. My name is Pedro Hampton. I'm a lawyer and I'm a coordinator for Instituto Alana. I'll start by delivering my audio description. I'm a white man. I wear glasses. I have a beard. And behind me, there's a wood um, furniture. I would like to thank all of our speakers, Richard Paquin, Congresswoman Leandra, and Secretariat Mariana Neres. Thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about the importance of all stances of the government for this Pact for Early Childhood in Brazil, for us to ensure the rights of children and teenagers in Brazil. It's highly difficult, but it's a responsibility for all of us, families, communities, societies, the state, and all levels of the government, executive, judiciary, and the legislative. And the justice system should uphold more sensitive, more friendlier justice for children and teenagers, especially in early childhood. And we know too well that sciences such as neuroscience and social science, we know that early childhood is really sensitive. And we know that in that period of life, we develop our skills, cognitive development, and the full possibility for development. So I would just like to get started, and I would like to invite Dr. Richard Kim Paine, and he does work in the National Council of Justice, and he is the leader of the National Alliance, the National Early Childhood Alliance. And we have done work on the National Early Childhood Alliance for a year now. And I would like him to talk about the importance of this alliance in our country. And this alliance is a unique opportunity for the whole system of justice, for us to learn about early childhood and protect early childhood. Good morning, Richard Paikim. Thank you so much for being here. And I would like to start with a question for you, for us to start our debate. What's the importance of the National Early Childhood Alliance led by the Brazil Justice Council, not only for judges, lawyers, psychologists, social workers? What's the
Bom dia,
importance
até
of
hoje
this
é
alliance?
Richard Paquin. Hoje eu
Good
faço
morning to all.
parte do
My name is
Nacional
Richard
Justiça,
Payakim. Today I'm here at the National Council of
sul-coreano.
Justice.
Então,
I'm
aqui atrás
I'm of
temos
South Korean
um homem
descent,
branco
and right behind me,
representando
there's a
basicamente
white background and there's a Don
inicio
Quixote
de extrema
statue.
honra e alegria de poder
And it's a
participar desse
pleasure for
evento,
me to be here in
dessa
this event.
conferência
The
que
event
vai ser tão
just as
importante
starts
assim,
in
jovens
childhood,
do
and
Pacto
it's so
Nacional para a
important for
Democracia, o
the
cumprimento à
Justice
deputada Natalie
Council.
Fragoso,
And
a
it's a
secretária
pleasure to be
Mariana
here with
Neres
Mariana
e
Neres. She's a
também
secretariat in early childhood and represents the
anfitrião e
Unified Social
orientadora Pedro
Work
Artung,
Assistance
para ter
System.
poder esse
It's a
cumprimento do
pleasure to
Pacto
be
aqui
here
pela
with
Paquim
Pedro
Justiça
Artung.
na
And I welcome all
pessoas
of you
que
who've
têm
joined us
experiência,
today.
profissionais do
I thank
departamento,
everybody who
que
is
aliás é um
here in
prato
this panel, and I would like
currículo
to thank
impressionante
all of you
e
in the
até
first panel. You
essa
have
qualificação
amazing
anos
background,
de
and it
vida de
shows how
nossas
dedicated you
crianças
are
que vão
to
se
our
tornar
children
na
here in
realidade
Brazil.
uma
And
jovem
you're
primeira infância.
doing work
E após
to
não só ele,
actually
mas
bring about the National Early Childhood Alliance.
do alerta de
I would
Michel
like to
Milton
say
Temer,
that
de que
what Michel de Montaigne told us, that we should be careful that getting old doesn't make us sad, because getting old shows that each and every effort that we target for youth and childhood, it shows that our dedication delivers results. And oftentimes it makes us younger. The moment we see children getting a good, getting um, the chance to go to work, when children are selected, and when children get proper treatment at hospital, when children receive good work catered by Happy Child, Criança Feliz program, and also when we are able to offer children the opportunity to have a new life. So seeing all of that shows that our work is worth it. It's not easy to work for early childhood. It's not easy to work and fight against domestic violence. It's not easy to fight society omissions, inefficiency omissions. It's not an easy task. However, the more we make progress, even if it's a small progress we make, it brings us hope. Oftentimes, people give up and they say we're fooling ourselves, but that's not true. All of us who have been dedicating and doing work for children to actually develop their skills and voice their pain, all of those people who work towards helping children, all of those people are going to find support in the National Early Childhood Alliance, as well as in the Child and Adolescent Statute. All of those solutions are targeted at providing support for children, and all of us, we need to do the work. It doesn't matter if it's hard or if we have limited resources available, or even if red tape is a problem. That's an obligation. Not only it's stated in our constitution, and as Elon McCree has said, the world doesn't the world wants to know if we are going to bring the ship to the port. It doesn't matter if the storm is terrible. So now we're here to talk about the National Early Childhood Alliance. You know, only 10 minutes to talk about such an important initiative is not long enough, but I'll try to provide you a bird overview on this initiative. And we're doing work with or without the pandemic. I would like to remind you that when we started the when Justice Dias Toffoli, he started working in the Justice Council as the president, he would tell us that all of us in the justice system, all of us should develop a specific action for children in early childhood. And all of the interventions that we have implemented, such as court, child and adolescence court, um, Center for Psychological Service for Child and Adolescent, all of those places, they did not comply with our laws. Oftentimes because they didn't know the law well enough, and they had to develop strategies, especially when we consider the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood. We know, we are aware that those institutions did not invest as much energy in enforcing the law. And as we know, the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood, enacted in 2016, it focused on providing proper treatment for children from 0 to 6 years old. And we know that this early childhood period is highly important. This law, National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood, and I've commented about this law in the text of the law 14 times. It says that we need to work in an integrated fashion. Not only should the Justice Council do work on the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood, but all the other actors and stakeholders involved in early childhood should do work. Therefore, in the 11th of April 2019, we enacted the law, and there were representatives from the executive level, legislative level, from towns and cities, and also civil society organizations. And we enacted the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood. And we started the meeting, and there were 40 people when we started doing work. And now there are over 102 signers supporting the law. This is highly important for us in Brazil. And our main goal was to strengthen public policy in early childhood. That was the main goal for us to start work. And it made all of those institutions support it. And we focus in 5 main actions. The first one is to have seminars in the 5 Brazilian regions, in the South, Northeast, Southeast, North. And we started with a seminar in 3 regions last year, and we had adherence of over 3,000 people who came to our events. Unfortunately, we had to put off the last 2 seminars due to COVID-19 pandemic, to avoid the spread of COVID-19. And I believe that in 2021, we're going to have other seminars. Also, we have awarded good practices. We have already awarded 12 good practices, and among them, and there were over 200 practices that were enrolled, and we managed to select 12. And for us to move on to the next stage of spreading those 12 good practices, we're doing the work now. We're offering training now for implementation and dissemination of those practices, good practices. Also, the National Early Childhood Alliance focuses on a national analysis, at least on 125 cities in Brazil, and considering diversity of childhood that we can find all over Brazil, we're going to do work especially on 5 axes. First one, women or teenagers who are pregnant and in prison. The second one is protecting children when parents get divorced or separated. Also, we're going to work on children trafficking. And the fourth one, institutions of adoption. And the last one, protecting children and teenagers. So this diagnosis is going to be made in a partnership with the UN, and there were over 1,000 people enrolled, and researchers are starting work soon in September 2020. I believe that next year we'll be able to finish doing the work, not only for the judiciary system, but for services as well. You know, education, health, social assistance, and all of this is going to be good to improve public policies in all of those areas. Also, we're going to offer training. Training is going to be distance learning, and training has been offered, is already being offered in the justice system. And also there will be 24,000 training opportunities for people in other sectors. All of our partners are welcome to join so that we can reach people everywhere in Brazil. And the fifth action related to the alliance is to spreading and focusing on communication to let everybody know the rules in the rules about the National Early Childhood Alliance. We want politicians, we want services, we want all the justice system know what's in our um, National Early Childhood Alliance. So I would also like to highlight that the Early Childhood Brazilian Network is not only limited to these activities. I would like to say that the Justice Council is wide aware that we need to have other activities related to the National Early Childhood Alliance. And we've been doing work for implementing protective listening for children. So, children and teenagers who have suffered violence or abuse, they are going to have the chance of getting support. We're at a very important stage, which is consolidating the national flux of to cater services, not only the justice system, in an effort to help and offer victims of violence. We want to provide victims of violence the best service possible. Over 30,000 children are abused every year, sexually abused every year in Brazil. So we need to do not only eliminate the problem, but provide a proper service, proper care for victims. Between June and July 2019, the National Council of Justice has also provided some assessment of justice courts, and we've tried to change the organization and the system so that we cater better services for the population. Also, in the 12th of October 2019, when we celebrate Children's Day in Brazil, we have launched the new adoption system. And there's a new alert system that judges can follow up all of the deadlines on the adoption processes. So it was important to see that there were new strategies, and we're doing better monitoring on the processes, not only for children to go back to their families or to be adopted by other families. And I think I would like people from other countries to know that nowadays, in the national system of adoption, there's the possibility of having statistics on the system of adoption. And currently, there are roughly 33,000 children who were adopted, and 5,000 of them are available for adoption. And out of those 5,000, 2,700 are going to be adopted. And 3,000 children have already been adopted ever since 2019. And over 37,000 people want to adopt children. Therefore, we can plan and try to cater to the needs of all the children who are waiting to be adopted and waiting for families to adopt them.
So we are looking to see if we can implement what we call foster care. There's also last project that's connected to early childhood, which is a program that we call Destrava, so unlocking. So we want oversight agencies of the municipalities in the state, the justice system, the National Council of Justice, the National Association of Prosecutors. We have all joined in a large project along with the Ministry of Education and the National Educational Fund, and also the Ministry of Infrastructure, so that we can unlock priority works. So the priority is for building daycare and schools this year and in 2021. So we have started this project in the state of Goiás. Just so that you can have an idea, 40% of the works for schools and daycare that were stopped, we have been able to restart. So we've had a lot of progress, and this will allow us to cater to the needs of our children and adolescents. This is a reflex. We know that the early childhood National Alliance has been very well accepted, not only in the justice system, but also by the other partners and agencies. And I think that has allowed us to move forward with the implementation of the early childhood national integrated policy. So I would like once again to thank the organizers of the event. I think I went over my time. And I would like to thank you for the invitation and for the work that you're doing, especially the organizers. Thank you, Judge Richard, for this very broad explanation of the National Alliance for Early Childhood. And we can see that the justice system itself can't take care of everything. We have the statute of children and adolescents, and now we have the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood that brought important changes to that statute. And now to explain a little about the importance of the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood of 2016, I'd like to hand the floor over to Federal Congresswoman Leandria. She is the chairwoman of the Mixed Committee for Childhood. You have the floor. Good morning, everyone. This is my audio description. I am a white woman. I have red hair. I'm wearing a white jacket, and I also have a white wall behind me. Pedro mentioned very clearly the importance of this regulatory framework, the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood. So I would like to thank the invitation for being here to say hello to Judge Richard Kim, to Secretary Mariana Neres, who's doing very great work in this area of early childhood. And the National Integrated Policy is really important because it has guidelines for us to create the public policies for early childhood. So more important to passing a law is to ensure that it is truly implemented and enforced so that it will allow for the changes that are the purpose of that law. When a law is enacted, it has already gone through several different rounds of society. And this integrated policy is the same thing. It began with society, not in parliament. So for us to be where we are right now, where we have this opportunity of integrating the justice system with this fight for protection of early childhood, it was a very long journey for us to be here. And we opened, we paved way for us to have positive rights of children. And I think the justice system will be essential for this to become a reality and that we can have the changes that we dreamed of making when we passed this law in 2016. I would like to share with you a presentation which to tell us a little bit about the journey of this act for the enactment of the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood. And I know that this is a major legacy that as lawmakers we will be able to leave forever, and especially for our children. So I am the chairwoman of the Mixed Parliamentary Front for Early Childhood, and we are representative. We are Congress people that are committed to improving early childhood. The Parliamentary Front was founded in 2011 by Congressman Osmar Terra. And this creation of this Parliamentary Front allowed to operate this support within the Brazilian Congress to approve these laws for protection of early childhood. And this was the work that led to the bill that then became the regulatory framework for early childhood that was enacted in 2016 as a national integrated policy. And I know that Congressman Osmar Terra faced some difficulties to get support, to find people to help defend early childhood, because we need more than just goodwill to do that. I'm having a little bit of problem with my presentation. One moment, please. So we have Osmar Terra, Mariangi, who also helped us. And they started to create leaders to protect early childhood, and so that we can have public policies that will protect our children and change the reality of Brazil. So they're part of the hemispheric network of Latin American and Caribbean parliamentary members. And this has allowed us, we have now a partnership with Harvard University, and we've had, and this is a program with Harvard University for executive leadership in early childhood development. It's in its 10th edition. We have researchers from all over the world, so we can have a lot of contributions. And so the bill became law in 2016, and it's considered one of the most progressive laws in the world because it's based on scientific evidence showing the importance of early childhood in human development, and which is why we need to have these public policies to change the lives of people and Brazil's future. So we created 5 departments, and we work with 5 axes within our parliamentary front. And there are 2 very important axes that are connected to the work that we do at the parliamentary front. The number 1 purpose is to implement the national integrated policy. And we know that this demands a lot of work. We need a lot of stimuli, leadership, and the stimulus so that the cities can have municipal plans for early childhood. Unfortunately, the reality here in Brazil is that a lot of important programs and policies are not continued when there's a change in government. So what we want to do with the national integrated policy is to allow for this continuity of public policies so that it becomes state policy. And so to have these government plans and municipal plans, this will allow us to move forward with this. We are now in an electoral year here in Brazil in 2020, and we want early childhood to be on the agenda of the mayoral candidates. They need to be committed to that, to have that in their government plans, and then execute those actions to which they commit themselves. And then we also have the intersectional aspect of it. This is very important for us when we speak of that is something in the law. And we were able to learn with Judge Paine that this is something that is mandatory, but how can we make it happen? Having this intersectoriality explicit in the guidelines has really helped. We had the public hearings, we had a seminar on early childhood. We are now in the 8th edition, and we always deal with the importance of public policies for early childhood. And we created several dialogues with experts at the House of Representatives so that to show that we need to work together towards a common goal and not working individually. which unfortunately is how most public policies are done here. And so this national alliance gives us an opportunity for actual results. Recently here in Brazil, we had a very important result, which was the passing of the Fund for Basic Education, for elementary education. So that will allow for federal funding for early childhood education. We also work with interinstitutionality. So we have partnership with several different agencies. We've held several seminars. We created an interinstitutional commission of the Parliamentary front, and we have encouraged the state legislators to also create state parliamentary fronts for early childhood. So we have more than 100 signatories of the National Alliance. We see how this interinstitutionality is important. This shows that the intersectionality and interinstitutionality is very important. And of course, public policy requires budget. And this budget is approved by the legislature. So the Parliamentary Front for Early Childhood has been working so that this budget is included in the annual budgets, in the budget guidelines, so that we have funds specific for early childhood for implementation of these public policies. And we have worked with the federal government, and we have got a result so that the early childhood could be the priority of the plural annual plan for 2020-2023. And the federal government accepted that priority, and it's in the plan. And we've seen that this is also in several state budget plans. We also need to monitor these public policies. This is very clear in the Early Childhood National Alliance. Each institution that is part of the alliance must do their work. And so we worked with the oversight agencies of the states and the federal accounting court, so that the population can know how much is being applied to early childhood policies, so that the citizens know how much of the general budget is going to these early childhood policies. So we have committees to monitor this. And we have an external commission for early childhood policies to do this monitoring. So it's been a very long journey, but we know that this integration of these different institutions here in Brazil, and especially now that we have the justice system with us, this is going to help us. We have now these proposals within the justice system that will leave a great legacy, because we, as a Congress, I am a Congresswoman only for a certain period. Someone that's in the ministry is only there for a certain period. But when we have the justice system, we know that Judge Richard, for example, will be a judge for a very long time. The justice system does not rely on who is in the government. So we're very happy to share this project, which is the National Alliance for Early Childhood, so that everyone knows that the state and family must take care of our children. And it is our duty as citizens to take care of our children. Because then if we start taking care of children at the early age, we'll be able to build a better country. And this is a collective construction. We can't do it on our own. Thank you, Pedro. I want to congratulate everyone that's involved in the National Alliance for Early Childhood, because this has allowed for early childhood to be seen in a different way within the justice system and by the other Brazilian institutions. And even though there is a term for its implementation, but we know that it will never be forgotten. And all this effort will be replicated throughout the states and the cities where our children live. Thank you, everyone. Have a good seminar.
Thank you, Congresswoman Leandri. And listening to you show us that we have done a lot of work and it's extremely valuable for all of us, but we have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do. It's important to pass the laws, and we need to rely on the laws, but it's important that we can follow as those laws are enacted. And we also need to sensitize different stakeholders involved in the national education guidelines and framework. And we're developing strategic work. We need to change public policies and have those public policies become policies of the Brazilian state. All of us should be engaged. Thank you very much for delivering this presentation. And we need to transform laws into public policies. And over these 30 years that we have the child and adolescent statute, we know that the law is important, but we need to enforce the law. So to talk about the importance of public policies, I would like Mariana Neres, the early childhood in the unified social work assistance system. She's the secretariat, and after having 30 years of the child and adolescent statute law, how can we strengthen policies in early childhood to prevent violations and protect children's rights? Hello, good morning to all. I would like to thank all of you for having me here today. I'm here representing the executive power. My name is Mariana Neres. I'm a white woman. I'm wearing glasses. I'm at home. Uh, I'm I took a sit here in my armchair. The armchair I used to breastfeed Gustavo, my 2-year-old son. And the importance of public policies, they start from the inside to the outside. So what we believe is going to be linked to the work we do. And all of the programs and strategies and public policies that we try to implement, they relate to our lives. I would like to thank and compliment Dr. Richard Kim, um, Congresswoman Leandri, and all of you who are here with us today. I would like to thank Instituto Alana and UNDI, the news agency on children's rights. I represent the Ministry of Citizenship and I work at the ministry. And I'm also representing the National Secretariat for Attention to Childhood, Luciana Siqueira. And it's great to be here with all of you today. And I believe that being here is good because we have the opportunity to let people from abroad know more about our experiences and understand the pillars linked to the public policies we have implemented so far, especially public policies linked to the National Early Childhood Alliance and the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood as well. So I would like to show you a PowerPoint presentation for you to understand the ideas on the subject. Today we're here reflecting upon the role of public policies in early childhood protection in Brazil, and considering that justice starts during childhood, and for us to provide support to the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood, we need to focus on some pillars. And the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood, it relates to the Brazilian Constitution of 1899, and we need to uphold the rights of children. The Article 14th on the second paragraph, it states that families identified in health, education, social work, and other systems for protecting the children, if there's vulnerability or risk, they need to place children as priority in public policies. Therefore, early childhood legal framework, and considering what Congresswoman Leandri has told us, the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood shows children are not by themselves. Children need to rely on their families for their development. However, oftentimes, families are in a vulnerable position to provide care for children. And because we're wide aware of that, we know oftentimes parents are not available to interact for children for a series of unfavorable circumstances, such as poverty, unemployment, abuse of drugs, violence, and other problems. Therefore, it's important that we protect children's rights in early childhood in Brazil by means of public policies. Therefore, we know families must take care of children, but the state is also responsible for taking care of children to foster development of children in early childhood. We know that in Brazil, most people are young in Brazil. Roughly 29.5% of people in Brazil is between 0 to 19 years old. It accounts for 56 million people, and early childhood accounts for 10% of the Brazilian population, roughly 20 million people. Also, there's another thing. Brazilian women give birth at an early age. This is changing. Women are having children later in life. Also, the fertility rate is following, especially for Black women and poor women. There's expectation for women to have children when they're older, but there are still teenagers who have children, and we need to strengthen policies to protect children and families. There is information from statistics here in Brazil that poverty and regional disparities are facts. And there are different types of childhood for different ethnicities, for different areas. For example, people who live in indigenous tribes, people who are descendant of runaway slaves in Quilombo areas. Also, there's an important number. In the first semester of 2020, there were over 1 million Brazilian children born in Brazil. And out of those children born in the first semester in Brazil, over 6% of them had only their mother's name in their birth certificate, which shows vulnerability due to not having their father available for them. In Brazil, there are a set of public policies that place children and families in the center. And those public policies are on health, human rights, infrastructure, culture, sports, and leisure, education, social development, and social work assistance. We have highlighted some policies that relate to it, but it's important to highlight that those policies depend on a set of stakeholders that go beyond the federal government. We know that federal entities have autonomy. For this reason, it's important for us to set pacts and alliances to focus actions and actually have greater conversions on the actions. And all of those policies implemented not only by the towns and the cities, the execution of the policies is done at regional, local level. And also, though those instances need to adhere to the process. And for us to keep the national alliance and strengthen the national early childhood alliance, it's important that federal entities adhere to action plans, such as what Congresswoman Leandri has mentioned. Also, implementing policies by towns and cities. Just to highlight health policies, they're not only related to healthcare, pregnancy, but also giving birth and providing support to children who have chronic disease, children at vulnerable positions, children with disabilities, and also paying attention to child mortality upon birth. There are other policies for providing support for women, such as the National Policy on Women's Health, offering them support, reproductive support, and also we offer the national policy, the national health policy on men's health, not from the prenatal process, but also helping them raise awareness on taking care of children upon they're born. We also focus on early childhood and education, such as the National Program for Education, integrating families to the schools, providing guidelines for quality and attention to children, providing access to daycare. And we also have the National Plan on Education through a law enacted in 2019 to make preschool available for all children from 4 to 5 years old. And that's a challenge for the National Education Program based on the law 12,796. Expansion on children education. The rate of frequency has raised from 30 to 34.2%. It shows that families adhere to those spaces of education. When we consider human rights, there's an articulation and strengthening of intersectorality, the National Plan on Early Childhood, and actions targeted at the civil registry, for example. We're focused, as I told you about paternity, but there's another important program by the federal government that connects states and municipalities, is also the number for human rights. And there are people can call for this hotline on human rights so that we can offer support for children who faced abuse and violence. And we want to protect children, and we depend on people calling the hotline to help us. When we consider social development and social assistance, there's a unified registry with over 76 million enrolled in this registry. And currently, 14.2 million families receive money from Bolsa Família, to some kind of welfare support program. It's meant to alleviate poverty and overcome poverty as well. Currently, we are assessing this program, and we want to provide support for children in early childhood, especially for families who do not adhere to the conditionalities. When we consider early childhood, we focus a lot on vaccination and keeping track of children's weight and height. And we focus on children from 0 to 4 years old, roughly. Also, we focus on education via Bolsa Família program. So families need to keep children in school to receive the funds related to Bolsa Família. We also have a set of families who have children who are entitled to Bolsa Família, and those families, 30% of them have children in early childhood. And after the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood was enacted, we have also, Osmar Terra was a minister back then when he developed the project, and now he is a congressman. Now the program Happy Child is active all over Brazil, but it caters mainly to pregnant women, children up to 36 months old, children up to 72 months old and their families, and families who receive support. Those children mainly, they have some kind of disability, and children up to 72 months, roughly 6 years old, and who might be adopted one day by other families. The Happy Child program is expanding now, and we expect it to be strengthened and soon. So the social assistance ACES and the social assistance network provide support with center for reference, such as called CRAS in Brazilian Portuguese, and the protection for families, it caters to over 94 million users. And we also offer support at other levels. And we work in partnership with states and municipalities. It's important to highlight that part of those options is catered by public authorities, but there are also civil society initiatives providing support as well. Roughly 45% of the support network is done by the civil society in partnership with municipalities and Brazilian states. Also, when we consider the federal government providing support to state and municipalities, there's a set of methodologies and guidelines for us to comply with Brazilian legislation. Some of the examples here, they relate to the support related to the center of reference for mothers of for children of women in prison. And oftentimes we try to have those women to get parole time. We also provide some support as relates to other strategies. We want to reduce violence for children facing violence, as well as other technical documents. Dr. Richard Paye-Kim mentioned that there's a relationship between the justice system and the service for providing support for children and teenagers. And we have the individual plan for providing support. And this is the kind of technical tool that helps children and helps the justice on deciding how to deal with those families and children. And I would like to say that Brazil is a country taking baby steps as regards family support. When we compare Brazil to other countries in the world, we have only 4% of families available to provide this kind of support. It's a huge challenge for us. We need to increase the number so that we offer better quality and better support for children. And when we consider all the other institutions, children up to 4 months, they need a better support. And other situations as well that we need to mention, such as acolhida operation, and we need to provide better support for children. Also, the pandemic is a problem, as well as when we consider flexibilization of methodology for the population as a whole, as well as children and teenagers. We want to reduce transmissibility, the spread of coronavirus.
I'm going to end just by mentioning the importance of the National Pact for Early Childhood. It's more than a political commitment. It's a document that reflects prioritization for mobilization and dissemination of the regulatory framework. As Congresswoman Leana said, this is not optional for work to work in an interdisciplinary and intersectorial way. Now this is law and it must be part of our plan. So the national policy has this assessment. It also allows to share the best practices so that the municipalities can work in a more organized manner in their territories. It allows for intersectorial training, and it gives more visibility and access to knowledge of the social policies and the justice system, and increases the possibilities of integration between the justice system and social policies for integration of these policies. So we do have major challenges ahead of us, and it is our duty to move forward uh, with each of these dimensions of the laws. So thank you for inviting us to be here, and we are at the disposal and wishing to get to the other side of the river, as Judge Kim said. Thank you, Secretary Mariana. Even as Congresswoman Leandre said, even though we do have this unique opportunity to work with the people in the justice system, it is important to involve all the stakeholders involved to public policies and to follow up with this legislation, which is always being updated. So it is key for us to have everyone together. We need multi-sectorial, interdisciplinary actions for us to create this environment of protection of children so that they can fully develop themselves, and so that families can do what we expect from them, which is positive parentality, so that they have the social and state support so that they can exercise this care towards their children. Not only just the families, but carers in general, um, educators, so that we can have this environment of protection also within the justice system. In all the cases and procedures that children and family face in the justice system, to make sure that their rights are protected and avoid violations. We have pregnant teenagers and women in the correctional systems. We are going to have someone speaking of this at the next roundtable. We have also those children that don't have any parental care. So all of this is important to be inserted in the justice system. So as a society, we have the duty to create these public policies. I want to thank Judge Richard, Congresswoman Leandri, and Secretary Mariana for being at this roundtable. That makes it very clear that although we it shows that we must involve all stakeholders in this complex kaleidoscope of childhood protection so that we can achieve what is in our federal constitution, that the insurance of the rights of children and adolescents must be absolute priority. And before I finish this roundtable, I would like to greet two people that were important in this, which is Silvana Jardim and Ivana Guest. We had the event with the same name, Justice Begins with Childhood, and it allowed us to begin talking about children in the justice system, and they continue working with this. So I would like to thank everyone that has been building this project together. There are many people involved. There are many organizations that are working daily to build this National Pact for Early Childhood. So we're going to pop out quickly, and we'll be back in 1 minute with our second roundtable for us to discuss the importance of civil society in building this pact and public policy and monitoring one. Pedro, I
Olá novamente a todas e todos.
Hello, once again. So we're now here for our second roundtable that's going to talk about the importance of civil society in building this National Alliance for Early Childhood to take these themes of childhood and adolescence to the justice system. So I have here Natalie Fragoso, Eduardo Marino, and Miriam Cordeiro here that are going to tell you a little bit about the Brazilian experience for some very important initiatives that change things. There's important discussion regarding the correctional system, network alliance for early childhood. Miriam is going to tell us about that. And also the production of knowledge, which we're going to hear about it from Eduardo Marino. So I'm going to do my audio description again. My name is Pedro. I'm a lawyer at Alana Institute. I'm a white man. I have a beard, glasses, and I'm wearing a blue jacket, and I have a wooden shelf behind me. So now I hand the floor over to Miriam, who is the coordinator of the Executive Secretariat for the Early Childhood Brazilian Network. Good morning, Miriam. It's a pleasure to have you here. Can you tell us about the importance of working in network for civil society to advance the agenda of early childhood? Well, welcome. I'm going to do a short description. I'm at home, as many of us. I'm a white woman. I'm wearing a red shirt, and in the back I have a blue wall with an Indian headdress on it. So my name is Miriam. I coordinate the Executive Secretariat for the Early Childhood Brazilian Network, and it's a great honor to be here. I watched the first round table. It was very important. It was very important. It's very happy to be here with Pedro, Eduardo, Natalie. I'm pleased to meet you. And I think what's important to highlight about the early childhood network, which is the reason why we're here, and the Alana Institute and the Open Society Foundation invited us to be part of this initiative. And I know we have people in Europe listening to us, and I'd like to greet you. We want to share these initiatives with those of you that are from abroad so that you can see how this National Alliance for Early Childhood has been successful in Brazil. And the Brazilian Network for Early Childhood has started in 2007 to ensure and protect the rights and public policies for early childhood. This is a network built by civil society organizations, over 50%, and we also have multilateral organisms, we have companies, we have businesses, schools, universities. So it's a very diverse network, which gives us a very broad range of action. We created the network, and it worked to create the first plan for early childhood in 2010. That was one of the first actions of this network. And now the network is reviewing this national plan, and it's encompassing a lot more things than the first one. And the whole network is working on this. So our way of working is a network so that we can build public policies, monitor and implement them. So within this scenario, I'd like to highlight that recently the network issued a statement um, for grieving for the 100,000 people that died uh, from COVID-19 here in Brazil. And the greatest number of women that are dying from COVID-19 are here in Brazil. And that affects us as a network for early childhood. We are impacted by that. And we must make this known. We must report this situation. So we've been working on this with the certainty that this is the way to go and that it's very important for this network to exist. Something else that's important to mention is that we have a great number of partnerships, both at the national and international level, to allow us to work. So our partnership with the National Pact for Early Childhood is a way to boost our participation and allow and make sure that the justice system is qualified and ready to respond to the demands related to early childhood in the Brazilian context. And so, unfortunately, it's in this context, I'd like to mention the case of the 10-year-old child that was raped for 4 years, ever since she was 6. She was raped by her uncle. And I need to point out that the work that we do with this justice system is precisely for moments like this one, for the law to be enforced when it's necessary. So we have to know that children are not mothers, that rapists are not father, and they have the legal right to an abortion in such as cases. This 10-year-old child was raped and got pregnant, and this has been discussed over the past week, her right to abortion. So this is a very emblematic case, and we need to recognize the strength for the powers to work together. Justice, education, along with the parliamentary front, social assistance. We all need to work together so that we can act more firmly and that we can get to the results as quick as possible, because we see these cases often take a long time and we need to respond quickly. Time is of essence in these cases. So, Pedro and Eduardo, I was with you when this work started to see how the Brazilian justice system would work. And the Network for Early Childhood has been together since then. We had our first meeting in January past with Judge Richard to think of this National Pact for Early Childhood. So these partnerships give us more power to act, and this is key at moments like this, given the scenario that the world is going through and Brazil as well. So I'm going to speak very briefly about some of the projects of the network because they reflect this moment of public policy. We've been working a lot with this. And We have indicators. I'm sorry. Oh, I can't hear her. I'm sorry. Meeting, it seems to be having a technical problem.
A gente pode depois voltar para a fala dela. Vamos ver se ela entra e sai.
We will see if she can get back soon. Otherwise, we can move on to another speaker.
Voltou. Vamos ver. Acho que voltou. Agora acho que ela saiu e voltou. Mas vamos esperar a volta dela. Senão a gente já pode. Vamos ver se eu vou confirmar. Ah, voltou.
Wait to see.
Ah, tá bom. Pois é, não sei o que aconteceu, peço desculpas. Mas, enfim, neste observatório, nós também estamos nos dedicando.
So we are also dedicating ourselves regarding the municipal plans for early childhood. And having these plans prepared and implemented will make it better for everyone. So we are going to help the cities and the states create these plans. This is an early initiative, and we are going to be watching the next steps so that we can gain scale. We want to have an online course for city managers to prepare these plans. And we have several fronts for public policy to be implemented in Brazil. And within this observatory, we have a library where we're gathering publications, videos, podcast guidelines, preferably in Portuguese, but also in English and Spanish, that are related to early childhood.
Also, concerning this girl, this 10-year-old girl who was raped for 4 years in a row, this is something, one thing that we need to pay attention to is the media. And the Brazilian media has shown the name and the face of the girl. And we keep on talking about the importance of protecting such information. And it shows that things are going backwards in Brazil because we had made a lot of a lot of progress as regards that. But the media now was so wrong that they showed her name and her face and even her address. Protecting such data is highly important, and I want to say this here. You need to be aware that what happened to her is so, so wrong. And even when we consider children going back to school during the pandemic, this is something delicate as well. And when we also consider elections, we need to provide politicians with information on the early childhood so that they commit to early childhood in their government platforms. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm eager to hear what you have to say. I represent the network, and there are over 200 institutions there, and I represent all of them here and all of this articulation with the National Alliance. We belong to the National Alliance. Thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you so much, all the audience, and good afternoon for people who are abroad. Miriam, thank you so much for what you said. And considering that many policies and laws, they have been created by civil society. Ever since when we consider the Parliamentary Front for Early Childhood, and we consider the National Education Guidelines and Framework Law, and creating this bill of law, there are many concerns related. And when we consider the National Education Guidelines and Framework Law, there were many concerns on pregnancy, child nutrition, and we also discussed continuous training for legal professionals, and as well changing the laws, especially article for civil process. I would like to give the floor now to Eduardo Marino. He's the Director of Applied Knowledge at Fundação Maria Carvalho Souza Vidigal, and he is providing leadership for us to change early childhood. Eduardo, welcome. The floor is yours. Hello, good morning to all. Good afternoon for people who are abroad. I'll provide my self-description. I'm a white man. I wear a beard. I'm wearing a shirt, and right behind me there's a brick wall with no paint on. I'm standing up because during the pandemic, I've been working standing up, avoiding to spend long periods sitting down. I would like to thank Open Society Foundations. I would like to thank Instituto Alana and for organizing all of the event. I would like to say hello to Natalie and my fellow panelists. I'll speak concerning the perspective of an organization, a civil society organization, a family organization. And for us to do work, we need to establish partnership with a lot of people. I'll be sharing my screen with you, and I'll have the support of a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. Can you see my screen? Can you see it? I'm a bit... now it is. Now it's available. The focus is to talk about our work in focusing on the early childhood ecosystem. We are wide aware that are lots of stakeholders and actors involved in this ecosystem, early childhood ecosystem. Our aim in the Sustainable Development Objectives, we decided to adopt the 4.2 aim. And up to 2030, we want to make sure all Brazilian children have quality development in early childhood related to all services offered to children. This is our aim that is implemented by governments. But when we consider the early childhood ecosystem, we believe that if we focus on it and Brazil reaches that goal, it's going to be positive for us. One of our axes of work is daycare. We want to provide daycare for people who want it and who need it. And we also want to make sure that preschool is available. In Brazil, it's mandatory. All children 4 years old on, they are granted the right to education. Also, another axis is to strengthen. We need to strengthen people who provide care for children, provide support for families, vulnerable families. And also, another axis is assessment, monitoring. If we don't monitor and assess policies, we're not going to see if things are actually changing. And another important axis that we adhere in our foundation is communication. Everybody needs to know how important early childhood is. We have some goals. The first one is to make sure quality child education is available, daycare is available, and children 4 years old on go to school. Also, we want the systems for assessment on development and child education implemented. As well, we also want to increase awareness of the impact of early childhood experiences in life. And we also want to foster CADI. Mariana Neres has talked about it before, and we want to make sure that families have access to quality parenting services. One of the initiatives by FMCSV Foundation, now we belong to a coalition, the Bernard Van Lee Foundation, the Center on Developing Child by Harvard University, the University of São Paulo, especially the School of Medicine, as well as INSPER, a school on economics and public management from São Paulo. Those are our partners. And this coalition is called NCPI, Nucleus on Science for Childhood. It was founded in 2011. And this is a process that is quite mature. We're talking now, 9 years after we started doing the work. I can tell you more about our actions. We belong to an ecosystem, and there's nothing we can do by ourselves. We are players in initiatives so that we contribute to public policies in Brazil. And what NCPI does? Our axes of work are: first, translate science for society, introduce scientific knowledge for society, and science knowledge should be shared with the population at large, using language easy to understand so that people understand and actually use it well. Another axis is to share and use knowledge. The third axis, influence practices and public policies. And then we move on to the fifth axis, which is foster child development. And CPI has 4 axes of work. The first one was already mentioned by Pedro and also by Congresswoman Leandri, which is the Executive Leadership Program. The second, Scientific Committee. The third, International Symposium. And the fourth, the iLab on early childhood. I'm going to focus on the first 2 axes, the leadership, the executive leadership program, and the scientific committee. The executive leadership program was created in 2011. And basically what we do in the program is to gather groups and teams from different levels of the executive, legislative, and the judiciary as well, as also people from regional level, state level, federal level, as well as civil society representatives, politicians as well, politicians at municipal level, state level, federal level. Also, there's a scientific committee to organize and identify knowledge that is actually important for public policies that we should consider for work. And they translate the knowledge in order to help the knowledge, to enable people to spread the knowledge. Up to now, we have launched some reports, 6 reports, as well as some videos. And when there's an event, such as a national congress, or when there's partnership with the press, the first report was on the importance of the connection, parent-child connection in early childhood. And the latest one was on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in child development and families. The executive leadership program, I believe that it's the initiative that has contributed the most for strengthening a network with actors, stakeholders in different positions in the civil society, people who were already interested in early childhood, but now they have deepened their knowledge. And when they started working together, plenty of those initiatives, many of the initiatives, ongoing initiatives now, they were assessed within this program. And as Pedro has said, there are 30 congressmen and women who joined, and also there were some judiciary representatives doing work, such as prosecutors, judges, even Dr. Richard Kim Paine, who was talking in the first roundtable, and Pedro has also joined to facilitate. As well, Miriam and Congresswoman Leandri have also joined. Mariana Neres has also joined. So it was great to see in the panels for today's event that those people also did work in partnership with us in the executive leadership program. And we are strengthening alliances to work within the early childhood ecosystem. Here, I focus on the specific case of a group of congressmen and women. We started doing work in 2011, and we wanted to create a parliamentary front, and different institutions such as ELP, they were one of our facilitators or partners in the program. And they were the ones who helped us develop this articulation with congressmen and women. And it was possible to draft the bill of law and keep on the debate, which led the bill of law to be approved. And in 2016, President Dilma Rousseff enacted the law. The law on the national. Also, I would like to talk about Judge Daniel Isler. He does work in the city of São Paulo. He was motivated with the idea of taking a course, and he felt like creating an initiative with support of Instituto Alana, and he really wanted to share information on the importance of protecting early childhood in the state of São Paulo. There were plenty of events all around the state, and this message was targeted at legal professionals. And this is Daniel Isler, Judge Daniel Isler, and he was awarded with the Good Practices grant in 2017. I would like to talk about Teresa's former Congresswoman Teresa Sarrita. She's currently the mayor of a city. She's the mayor of Boa Vista in Roraima, on the borders with Venezuela. However, the mayor, in partnership with other partners, they managed to create resilience to take care of early childhood issues in the area. And the area is facing immigration from Venezuelans coming to Brazil. She's doing work to foster care on early childhood. Basically, this is the story I would like to share with you. Thank you so much, Pedro, and my partners here. Thank you, Eduardo. I think that what you told us shows how important it is to strengthen leadership. And we need to foster the network and do work that goes to scientific level and talk to different levels of power. And it's important to mobilize the networks. And wonderful to see not only what you said, but also what Miriam said, how important the networks are. And we need to provide scientific knowledge to public representatives, not only through the institutions. Before Natalie Fragoso gets started, I would like to invite you to ask questions. After we finish, we'll have some time to answer the questions. We'll have a short Q&A session. And I'm going to ask this to Natalie. After 2016, what were the improvements in early childhood work? And I believe that Natalie is going to introduce a case on the collective habeas corpus for women who were pregnant and in jail. Natalie, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Pedro. Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Fragoso. My audio description is I'm a white woman. I wear glasses. I'm wearing a white jacket, and there's a bookshelf behind me. I wanted to talk about this collective habeas corpus, speaking about its story, what happened, why we filed it, then talking about the legal arguments, and so that it became a mirror for the courts to see the effects that the correctional policy was having on women and children. And then the advance, I will talk about the effects of the habeas corpus in the correctional system and how it's still producing effects. And talk about some judgments and cases that we've been monitoring. Well, what's the story? I'm part of collective, which is called CADU, and it is a collective of lawyers for human rights. So we filed this habeas corpus before the Supreme Court for all women in the correctional system and their children. So this was for pregnant women and mothers, and then this was also expanded by one of them, Michi Curie, that was in it, which was the Alana Institute, to expand this also to teenagers. And this habeas corpus was supported on several previous initiatives. And I'm going to start with that, which is a regulatory framework for early childhood. So the collective habeas corpus existed because of these articulations related to early childhood. It's interesting to see that the regulatory framework and the way that it was approved not only takes into account public policies for early childhood, but it looks at the child who has a woman that's in the correctional system. She's facing a criminal court and has a sentence, has been sentenced. And we believe that this was one of the major hooks for us to action. It's about this child in a situation of vulnerability, taking into account that the imprisonment of their mothers leads to a risky situation for these children. It presents challenges and obstacles for the healthy development of that child, and that the permanence in prison of their mother affects the development of children. This fragilizes essential bonds, and it recognizes a premise, which is what we took to the court, an argument that we took to the court, that imprisoning these women violates the women's right and also the children's rights. And the way that our correctional system works, we had this obstacle that was present in the early childhood regulatory framework. So what in the law allowed us to file this habeas corpus? We have in its articles, we have provisions that hold an obligation for the authorities that are aware of the crime. They have to ask if they have children, the age of the children, and they must contact the person responsible for carrying them. So criminal justice cannot leave aside if there are children. And then the second axis is that there is a possibility of replacing imprisonment for home imprisonment for pregnant women and for those that have children up to 12 years. So we saw that this was very important because we were looking at how the Brazilian courts were operating before the early childhood national integrated policy was enacted. And we looked at the Superior Court of Justice. And what we saw was that we have this law that imprisonment before the final and definitive sentence should be exceptional. And now that this imprisonment should be replaced to avoid harm to children. But the justice system was keeping those women in prison. And we saw that there is also incarceration of children. And the visibility of this problem is very low. It's only when certain cases, some tragedies show up. A woman that was arrested when she was in her 9th month of pregnancy and had to go back to prison right after giving birth, or a mother of 5 that was selling drugs, small amounts, and she was kept in prison, although she had 5 children depending on her. So we had this case by case visibility, but we couldn't, it was hard to have the visibility of the problem as a whole. So our collective of Lawyers for Human Rights saw that it was important to take this issue to court. So we filed this collective habeas corpus, and we went after the knowledge that had been accrued. When we look at the correctional system, we wanted to see what understanding, what specific problems they went through. And we saw that there was a lack of specific structure for pregnant women. And what we saw was the effects of incarceration are a problem for the women, but also for the children that often have to be there. There's a lack of access to hygiene. They're more susceptible to the transmission of diseases. So we went after this information that was in academic research, and we took this opportunity that was now presented by the provisions of the law. The Supreme Court had already recognized this as a problem. It had said that there is an unmistakable bankruptcy of the correctional system. It affects fundamental rights, reproductive rights, and it affects not only the women, but their children. So we said that this is a legal prison and that the women should be released. So we based ourselves on the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood to file this, and this case was filed in 2018. They granted the habeas corpus for all the cases where we had pregnant women, that their cases be reviewed. And the parameters were the following: to put them in home prisons whenever possible. If there isn't a violent crime, this should happen. So the Supreme Court says that there will be no pre-trial imprisonment in these cases. And imprisonment when we have pregnant women and young children involved should be the exception. We should use alternatives and other types of bonds instead of guarantees. And here I have an observation. It's not about one or other specific situation. The argument is that this is a collective risk, and to treat them individually obscures these cases and fragilizes the victims and creates obstacles to solve this problem as a whole. So that's why it was a collective action. The women and their children are collectively exposed to these risks. And although there's a variation in Brazil, we see that this is a problem common to all of them. So we have to protect them, these women and these children, and Brazil was persistent in violating their rights. So this is the argument that we took the Supreme Court, to the Brazilian Supreme Court. And just to speak about the effects, the problem has not been solved, the problem of female incarceration. We have many women that were been released from prison because of this habeas corpus. I don't have the exact numbers because this is very hard to monitor when we're speaking of the correctional system. So we don't know precisely how many women were released because of this decision. But we know that at least thousands of women were released thanks to this collective habeas corpus. However, on the other hand, we were not able to reduce female incarceration as a whole. But I think this organized the judgment and the sentencing where women are involved. The collective habeas corpus speak of this. I receive notifications in my email related to judgments that are based on this collective habeas corpus, and lawyers all over Brazil are using that for their clients. They know that pregnant women and mothers, they have specific conditions for their incarcerations, and these must be met. So imprisonment of these women must be avoided at all costs. It has to be exceptional. And now we see that the courts and appeal courts are accepting this decision. And something that has been said a lot is about the work that as a network, articulation and network, we needed to take this to to the district courts and that the lawyers are aware of these arguments so that we can protect these women and the children. So this is not a problem solved. And I think that it's important that we now have this vocabulary to help argue for the exceptionality of the imprisonment of mothers and pregnant women to allow for this integral protection. I think this is a summary of the facts and related to the story of this collective habeas corpus. Thank you, Natalie. Your words brought the perspective of this historic decision by the Brazilian Supreme Court that accepted for the first time a collective habeas corpus that ensured the protection of this rights of this non-imprisonment. So this created a new constitutional remedy in Brazil. And it allowed to change the structure in the correctional system, not only for each individual woman, but for this language that is absorbed by the justice system and the professionals that work there. So I think it's a very positive example, not only for those of us in Brazil, but also so that people outside of Brazil can see that strategic litigation and strategic legal thinking can allow us to take the agenda of early childhood to other realms. So I think it was key to show that for me to care for children, I need to care for those that care for those children, especially women that are mothers and are pregnant and that are waiting to be tried. I think this is a major paradigm that we have here, and that shows precisely that. And this case shows that no law needed to be passed. Well, actually, that it was not enough to enact a lei, that the network was not enough either. We needed strategic action and by our constitutional court to enforce this, and it's still not implemented. So this is continuous work.
There are some questions to the three of you. We're bound to wrap up, but those questions are highly important. And one question for Miriam, is that a law to force municipalities to create laws for early childhood at municipal level? There's one question for Eduardo. How is it fundamental to implement public policies and intersectoral networks to protect children in early childhood? This question is by Rosencare Keller. And one question for Natalie. What are the main challenges related to the collective habeas corpus? What were the main challenges faced in the system? Thank you so much for the question. Municipalities are not forced or not, it's not mandatory to create the law, but it's a very important guideline within the National Integrated Policy for Early Childhood. It's not mandatory, but I think it's our duty. We recommend that each and every municipality and state has either a municipal early childhood plan or a state level early childhood development plan. It's going to highly contribute to the area. Thank you for the question. That's highly important because it helps creating local committees by the government and civil society, as well as municipal councils, state councils. I would like people to consider the possibility of developing, drafting the municipal or state level plan. This is a nice way to bring people together. Each and every municipality has a different reality. So identifying the problems and challenges and solutions as relates to the justice system, municipal level, executive level. And it's interesting that ANDI, the News Agency on Children Rights, they have developed some guidelines for creating the plan. Not only the guide, but the guideline, but also a distance learning course on drafting the plan. It's in our it's available in our website, in the Early Childhood Brazilian Network website, www.rnpi.com.br. Thank you so much for complementing my answer. Eduardo, the floor is yours. When we consider child development, when supported by the policies, child development is going to be done in a better way. And there are some opportunities related to institutions as well. And one of them is the child registry. And it's meant to be an integration document. Part of the child registry is filled in by health professionals, as well as child education professionals. Currently in Brazil, there are different programs, and most programs are related to the social work assistance. Other than that, there are local networks that are key for the work and child development. For instance, a child at daycare, somebody who is responsible for taking care of that child at daycare, that person, that professional is able to identify development challenges or even identify abuse and negligence, and even let social assistants know that the child needs support, or even that the family is facing food insecurity. When we consider the Centers for Reference in Social Assistance at municipal level, sometimes families have a hard time getting daycare for the child, and maybe social workers may provide support for those families. Recently, we've offered support to the city of São Paulo to create protocols on that. Each and every municipality can develop their own protocols. This is my answer. There are some institutional levels, but the local network can come together and actually provide integrated support for early childhood development. Thank you, Eduardo. And when we talk about intersectorality in public policies as regards early childhood, this is highly important for us when we think about legal remedies as well. And regardless of the work we're going to do, be it at executive level or judiciary level, it's important that we keep integrated view, because child protection depends on health protection, education protection. Children need the network support, and the network with professionals, psychologists, social workers, and children need the support of different public policies and public services. The justice of system needs to have support of a network. For this reason, the National Early Childhood Alliance is key. So, Natalie, I would like you to talk about the habeas corpus and for us to change and show over 2,000 children were in jail with their mothers, and their rights were violated as far as access to health. And how is it possible that a child is spent at, at least one day in prison in violation to their child rights? So I heard from you, I would like to hear from you, what are the challenges for us to actually implement such an important role? I would like to thank you for this question. It's so important, such a crucial question. One of the challenges we've commented before, and I'll comment again, one of them is the demand for women who are addicted in, and also women whose children going were in jail. And this is one of the things that we managed to overcome. We respected it, and the proof should not be a problem, should not force women to go to jail. Another challenge usually would be related to criminal problem, the criminal records, women criminal records. And later on, we would say that the fact that she had a record on drug dealing, it shouldn't be reason enough to incarcerate this woman now. Oftentimes, most women here in Brazil, they face this problem. This is the context of women, incarcerated women in Brazil. Oftentimes, the fact that they live on the street is not reason for them to go to jail or their children be taken away from her. So many things that were overlooked by the first level court were questioned by the Brazilian Supreme Court. And there's another problem. In spite of the women facing problems related to Article 118, even by the Brazilian Supreme Court. So we realized that at some level, the right granted by the collective habeas corpus
changing a sentence in jail to home sentence, and the fact that those women had a vulnerable maternity, there were a series of interventions that were actually accepted. And in spite of that, it's difficult for for the justice system to actually grant those women the right to have home prison. And it's important to avoid incarcerating women, especially in vulnerable situation. On the other hand, when we observe those women concrete cases and concrete problems, as well as their rights, the right to be a mother, the right to take care of their children. So that's a huge barrier at all levels. And I could talk about COVID-19, which is a huge challenge and a very urgent challenge when we consider female incarceration. I could also talk about the fact how complex the situation is and how complex the response is, so that we actually offer something positive for women. But I would like to finish here. Thank you so much for listening
Obrigado,
to me.
Nathalie. A gente fica muito feliz de
Thank you,
saber que
Natalie.
vocês
We're
continuam
so happy
acompanhamentos.
that you keep on
A gente sabe que
doing
na promoção
the
dos casos,
follow-up,
vocês
you
junto da
keep
Pact
monitoring the
e de
case.
outras
And
ONGs
as you
também,
talked
vocês
about the
participam do Legislação
COVID-19
Urgente. A gente também
pandemic,
teve
for
dentro dessa
instance,
discussão do âmbito da pandemia,
pregnant women and also
registrado o maternado
women who are in prison now in face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much for telling us about the impact of the collective habeas corpus. We need to overcome that the impact of COVID-19 as well. We're coming to the end of our panel. I would like to thank Median. I would like to thank Open Society for the opportunity of us to talk today and share our ideas with people from abroad, to share the Brazilian experience on early childhood in the justice system, how to translate scientific knowledge that Eduardo told us, how to translate scientific knowledge to law professionals. And it was wonderful to listen to Natalie, how to change that knowledge and how to use that knowledge and change the structure of the judiciary system. I would like to thank all of you. It was wonderful to have you here this morning. I would like to thank all of you who started watching us from the start until now. I would like to thank all all of the technicians, the Brazilian Sign Language translate interpreters. I would like to thank interpreters, the interpreters translating into English. And I would also like to thank everybody in the Instituto Alana. I would like to thank the news agency on children's rights as well, and everybody who provided support for this event. After almost a year, now we have this event for us to think about the National Education Guidelines and Framework Law, and also for us to think about the next stages. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to all of you. And I'm so happy we were together today. Thank you so much.